Good Lord, we're back. Peace, everybody. This is Bleak. And welcome to another installment of Scarecrow's Chamber. Today, I would like to talk about another filmmaker who's meant a lot to me throughout my life. Who is probably the most impactful filmmaker for me personally. I grew up on his films, and they really hit me from a cultural standpoint, background standpoint. I really his films really resonated for me. Not just a man, not just a man of color, but as a human being. And today, I would like to talk about none other than the filmmaker Spike Lee. Now, Spike Lee, to me, is probably the most powerful. And what I mean by powerful is his films not only entertained, but they made you think. Spike is, one of the few directors, in my opinion, who really has a lot to say. He not only wants to entertain, but he wants to teach. There's always some powerful message that you get from his pictures. For example, Do the Right Thing, or Jungle Fever, or He Got Game, or School Days. She's Gotta Have It, you name it. And I definitely would say that he was probably the first filmmaker who really maybe look at pictures not just for the entertainment value. And I mean, I know Hitchcock was one, but when I was really little, growing up in the in the early '90s, Spike Lee definitely was that filmmaker for me. Along with the others, but I would say that his films probably impacted me first. My family watched his films a lot, and it's just somebody that I grew up with. And I'd like to take this time and give Mr. Lee his roses for not only entertaining me, but also enlightening me on a lot of things. And I would have to say one of my favorite films of his to start off was a film called I'm sure you heard of it, Malcolm X, which was about the life and also the tragic ending of Brother Malcolm X Shabazz, who, as we all know, was a minister for the Black Muslim movement back during the Civil Rights movement. And that story pretty much, followed, Brother Malcolm all through, through his childhood and also his life before he joined the nation. And of course, Brother Malcolm, he, like most people of color, experimented a lot of, racial inequity, and obviously the country was in turmoil. Systemic racism in the South, and it showed like the progression of his life. How he kind of lived a life of crime. He lived a life on the streets and all that stuff, and then he was incarcerated, and while during his incarceration he found the nation through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and reading his teachings and stuff like that. And so when he got out, he was reformed, if you will. And the film pretty much shows like how much he impacted the neighborhood of Harlem, where he predominantly lived in New York City, and pretty much just uplifting people, and then speaking the truth about the history of the United States, and how the Africans and people of color were downtrodden, and of course due to the slave trade and all that stuff. And then Brother Malcolm was one of those powerful voices. It wasn't just him; it was a lot of other people of the nation who was really spreading the word and trying to uplift people and spread the truth and stuff like that. So I think Mr. Lee, he did a phenomenal job, and of course Denzel Washington playing the lead of Malcolm. And just those two together was just an unstoppable force, and that film really, really resonates with me to this day. And of course, Malcolm X was one of my favorite historical figures, very impactful for me, still to this day. And I'm surprised that Denzel Washington did not, if I'm mistaken, I don't think he even got a nomination for that performance. And I don't know why he didn't, but But obviously, Denzel, would get his later on, and Mr. Lee. And one thing I liked about Mr. Lee's films is, like, all filmmakers, they have, you know, these I guess they have these trademarks, if you will. They have these particular things in their projects that they're known for. And Mr. Lee, he was very conscious enough to know that, you know, all great directors, you know, are known for something. And one thing that I've noticed in his pictures, I don't know if he did it in all of them, but he did do a great deal of them. For example, there were these shots in his pictures that, you know, the characters, they would have these type of epiphany moments, or they would just have these strong dialects. Sometimes with other characters, but sometimes by themselves, where it would be the shot where it'd be look like a shot where you're looking up at the character, and the character would look like they were just floating and towards the camera. And it was a very unique shot, and of course, you know, being a little kid, I didn't know how Mr. Lee was able to achieve that. But I believe they were just standing on a board, kind of like a board, and they would just, you know, just be cruising along. It kind of looked like they were floating. I'm sure anyone who's familiar with Mr. Lee's work would know what I'm talking about. But I just thought that was just a very unique thing, and he did it several, you know, countless times in his pictures. I do remember seeing it in Malcolm X. I do remember seeing it in Jungle Fever. Those two films in particular. I'm sure he did it in most. I just can't think right off the back. And another film that I really loved was Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing was a great one too, and that film pretty much, you know, depicted a lot of racial tension and stuff like that. You know, between you know, Afro American community, Caucasians, and Asians, and Hispanic, and it was just a great story. A lot of tension dolled up into one compelling story, stuff like that. And Mr. Spike Lee, he was what you would call an action director. He not only, you know, wrote and directed his films, but he occasionally would act in them as well, which was very unique. I never, you know, besides, you know, Hitchcock, a guy who appeared in his pictures, but Spike actually acted in his pictures, which was pretty cool, you know. So that just shows the type of talent that he was and is still to this day. And you know, he was actually the leading role in Do the Right Thing. He played a character called Mookie, who was a guy who worked at a pizza parlor, and he was working for a guy named Sal, played by the late great Danny Aiello. Great film, man. And I still watch it to this day, man. You know, other great actors, you know, John Turturro and Ossie Davis, the late Ossie Davis, the late Ruby Dee, Rosie Perez, and also hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Spike Lee's sister, Joie Lee. Forgive me if I just butchered her name, but I believe that's how you pronounce it. She did a great job as well. Just a great collection. Also, you know, you had a young Martin Lawrence who was in the picture. Just a great collection of the late Robin Harris, funny as ever. You know, just a great collection of actors, man. It was well put together. I really loved it. Also, the guy who played Radio Raheem, late I forget his name. I know his last name was Dunham. Please forgive me, I forget his name. But he did a great job too. It was you know, the whole love and hate thing. Obviously, I'm not prepared for this. I'm just rambling like I always do. But great film, and obviously it had a very controversial ending. And a lot of people say, you know, why the Mookie, you know, throw the trash can, and why and stuff like that. And I don't want to speak for Mr. Lee, but I think the reason why he did it was because obviously, you know, it was a very climactic scene where Radio Raheem was murdered by the police, and all of the neighborhood kind of stormed towards Sal and his sons and stuff like that. And I think, and I don't want to put words in Mr. Lee's mouth, but I always believe that the reason why Mookie threw it was to kind of take the tension off Sal. That's what I kind of think. I could be wrong, but that's what I always thought. Because just like Ossie Davis's character, the mayor said, you know, Sal and his boys was not responsible for what the cops did. And and even at the end, you know, we hear Mookie and Sal talking about it. It was like Mookie said, you know, it don't matter, Sal. You're gonna collect the insurance anyway. So that was always my theory about it. But it's still an ending that that really carries with me to this day. Great film. Do the Right Thing. Also, another film that I really loved was Jungle Fever, starring Wesley Snipes and Annabella Sciorra. Probably butchered her name as well. But also Lynette McKee was in there, and great picture. It was about a man who has an affair with a Caucasian woman, Italian woman, and throughout the film you just see the type of tension between the African American community or Black community and Caucasian community and stuff like that. And one of my favorite scenes in the film was actually a scene where Lionel McKee's character, who played Snipes' wife in the film, she and all of her girlfriends was kind of in the room, talking about the dynamic between how men and women and all that stuff. It was just great. How I just love how it was shot, and also Teresa Randall, she showed up in there. I just love that scene for some reason. It was a scene that really carried with me throughout that film. It was a scene that really carried with me. Beautifully photographed, and just another great film. Another great film. A lot of also John Turturro was also in there. Tara Fell, she was in there. Just a great film. And I also love another great film. Mo Better Blues. Mo Better Blues. One of the GOATs. Denzel Washington played a leading character called Bleak Gilliam. And that was a character that I really resonated with. His name was Bleak Gilliam. He played a trumpeter. He was a musician. And also Wesley Snipes, he appeared in that one. Played a character called Shadow. And it was basically Denzel played a guy who was a musician, and he kind of was like I guess you could say like a ladies' man and stuff like that. And he was bouncing back between Cinda Williams' character and Joie Lee's character, and just once again a lot of tension, a lot of back and forth. Just great storytelling, drama as always. Just great. But as far as the color, the stock color that Mr. Lee used in that picture of Mo Better Blues was very, very well put together. It often had low lighting, because a lot of the scenes were like in a club, so it had like a lot of low lighting, but very, very type of hypnotic color, with the jazz elements, stuff like that. It was pretty cool. I really liked the way that film was photographed. But I would have to say the film that I watched the most, Mr. Lee's film, had to be He Got Game. That had to be the one I watched the most, man. It was a basketball film. I love basketball. I'm a huge basketball fan. Once again, one of the GOATs. Denzel Washington was in there, opposite of NBA legend Ray Allen, who had one of the most remembered names in cinema history, Jesus Shuttlesworth. And that was a story where Ray Allen played a high school prospect named Jesus Shuttlesworth, top prospect in the country, and Denzel played his father called Jake Shuttlesworth, and he was a guy who was doing time due to the accidental murder of his wife. So, and that happened when Jesus was a kid, and Jake was given this proposition because Jesus was a top prospect, and the warden at the prison told Jake, said, if you can, I'll let you out on a work release program, which means if you can persuade your son to go to Big State, which was a university that the warden was a big fan of. I think he was a part of the alum or something like that. But he wanted his son to go to Big State, so Jake was let out for a week, and then once he and Jesus were united again, of course, Jesus, he felt strong animosity because of what happened. And throughout the film, you see this progression between the two. It's kind of a love-hate situation, and then at the end of the film, there was this big match between one of them, because through the film you see like these flashbacks, because Jake, he was a basketball player in himself, and then you can see like these type of intense battles between Jake and Jesus when Jesus was little, and Jake would kind of pretty much prepare him for what the competition that he was going to face as he got older. So there was a lot of tension there and a lot of hostility between the two, because as we all know, basketball is a cutthroat sport. You go hard or you go home. Even though I kind of think it's kind of softened down by today's standards, but I digress. But He Got Game was probably one of my favorites. It's definitely my top three Mr. Lee's films. And that the way that film was photographed, it kind of had more of a kind of a grittier type of photography. It was kind of similar to Do the Right Thing a little bit. Had a little bit of that, just the way that it was photographed and stuff like that. What I loved, what I loved about that film, not only with the story and the character development, the character art, but the music, the score. And I believe Mr. Lee, he worked with the London Symphony Orchestra for that one. And Mr. Aaron Copland, I believe, who that was, who helped score the picture. But that film was beautifully scored. That's what I loved about it a lot. It was because the film took place in Brooklyn, Coney Island, and it was a very urban setting, but it just had this beautiful score that sometimes it just took you out of the urban setting and it put you in this. I don't know where it took you, but it just did something for me, and I really loved this. I really loved that score. That was a score that really, really stuck with me, and I still listen to it from time to time. It was very, very beautifully put. Especially in moments where one of my favorite scenes in that film was Jake is talking to Jesus about his favorite all-time NBA ball player, and he was talking about how he loved Earl Monroe and stuff like that. And it's crazy because I'm someone who studies basketball history and stuff like that. I think it's very important. There's a lot of basketball greats that I don't think get enough recognition. And he was talking about Earl Monroe and how, because the crazy thing about it, the story that he told Jesus was actually true. Earl Monroe, he from Philadelphia, and when people could see what he was able to do on the court, they actually called him Jesus, which is pretty crazy. And in fact, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has a funny story about it when he first went up against because they used to have these tournaments and stuff like that, and Kareem being from New York and Earl being from Philadelphia. And he said when he first saw Earl Monroe arrive on the court, everybody started saying Jesus, Jesus, and so that was actually a true story. Yeah, Earl Monroe, he started calling him Jesus, which is pretty funny. And I like how and that's when Jake told Jesus, that's how you got your name. It wasn't because of Jesus in the Bible, but it was Jesus of North Philadelphia, Jesus of the playground. So I just love that scene. That was one of my favorite scenes, and that probably the favorite. And another film that is very underrated in my opinion was a film that he did with Anthony Mackie. It was a film called She Hate Me, and that was a very, very different film. It really took you into this world that's really not discussed a lot. But when you watch the film for the first time, you automatically think that it's about something that's kind of in your face, but it's really about something else. And I believe Anthony Mackie, who we all know was famous for the Avenger films and stuff like that, playing Falcon and stuff like that. But this was a film that Anthony Mackie took on, and he was very good. I liked him a lot. Kerry Washington was also in this film, and once again, John Turturro was in the film. Dania Ramirez, and a few other people. Q-Tip was in there. Ellen Barkin, Woody Harrelson. It was a good film. I liked it. It was Mackie. He played a guy who worked at a firm. I forgot the name. I think it was called Regia, and he had a friend within the company who was a doctor, and he pretty much discovered that there was a lot of corruption in the company, and this guy ended up taking his own life and stuff like that, and he passed on all of the footage that he collected talking about how much corruption was in the company, stuff like that. So Mackie, his character, became a whistleblower, and then he pretty much got blackballed by this company and stuff like that, and you see this dynamic where he struggles because the company froze all his money and stuff like that, because this was it became a really, really national thing that went all the way up to Supreme Court or something, like Capitol Hill or something like that. But he has this history with Kerry Washington's character named Fatima, and she comes back into his life, and she has a female partner, a lover, whatever you want to call it, and stuff like that. And she comes back into his life, and she wants to have a child and stuff like that, and she asks him to do it and stuff like that, and then he agrees to it and stuff like that, and he goes on this wild ride because, like I said, his assets are frozen, so he's struggling financially because he can't access his money. So he kind of gets into this little side business where he pretty much has babies with a bunch of lesbian couples and stuff like that. So it's very 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 different, and of course the way those scenes were shot, it was very very dramatic, but I really liked it. And of course, the film is not about that. It's kind of like a side story. But I really enjoyed it. The film. I don't think the film was really critically acclaimed, but I really liked it because it had a lot to say. And I think Anthony Mackie did a great job in the scene where, they're in the court and he talks about, what the doctor was talking about and all of the corruption and all the stuff that Brigitte was doing and all that stuff. Great performance. And I believe Joie Lee, she appeared in there as well. Great film. But Mr. Lee, he's still doing his thing and living up here in New York. And I believe I'll tell you something. Mr. Lee, he is New York to the core. I'm sure a lot of you know that, man. He's at every Knick game. With the orange and blue. He's kind of like how Jack Nicholson is in Los Angeles. He's there at every game. Down there in Brooklyn. He is New York to the heart. And that's the unique thing about him. Like damn near all of his films were shot in New York. Probably, I think it was like a couple of that weren't, but a lot of his films were shot in New York. So he is a New Yorker to the heart, and it would be really, really great to meet him someday. Somebody that I truly, truly revered, and I just want to thank him for really, really giving us something to remember and to talk about for many generations to come. And also, he talks about a filmmaker that he really liked was Japanese filmmaker Akira Kurosawa, who is really known for probably the most revered filmmaker in Japan. And I've always known who Akira Kurosawa was, but I never really got to revere his work, but I'm really going to get into it. And there was one film that I saw that I liked about him, but I need to get really get well acquainted with his work. And also Oscar Micheaux. Some of you probably don't know who he is. Oscar Micheaux was the first Black American filmmaker in Hollywood, who I don't think people just talk about enough. But anybody who's a film buff or who can appreciate great artists and great filmmakers probably know who he is. I really like to get into his work as well. But like I said, I know about Oscar Micheaux because of Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, spoken about him, quite often. But yeah, man, Spike Lee is, he's the truth, man. I really can't praise him enough, man. There was another film that I wanted to talk about. Can't really think about it, but one thing I also noticed, I liked how he sometimes would use, the same actors in his films, because like it was a, and this is something that a lot of filmmakers do. They have these actors that they have this chemistry with, a lot of camaraderie with. So they would sometimes, make these stories that is specifically built for these actors. And of course, Mr. Lee, he worked with Denzel a few times, or John Turturro, Lana Key, and his sister. So I really like that. I like how he worked with Wesley Snipes a few times. So I really like that about him. I liked how he was a director who really had a goal in mind of setting a tone, and I like that he would sometimes work with the same people, but also at the same time giving a lot of up and coming young artists a shot, which is what he does a lot today. Working with a lot of great up and coming times, man. That's actually a bucket list for me. I would love to appear in one of his films one day. Man, never know. But yeah, man, I just wanted to give Mr. Lee his roses while he's still with us, and I doubt he'll ever come across this. But Mr. Lee, if you ever come across this, just thank you for all of the work you've done, and for all the work you'll do in the future. And even though you're a diehard Knick fan, and I would like to, I would like to go I would love to go to a Knick game one day because I'm right here in New York, so I would like to go to one of those games and just see him one day. You never know, but yeah, Mr. Lee, thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time, till we meet again. Safe journey.